It's my real pleasure to be here today. I feel kind of honoured and daunted a bit at the same time to be amongst so many brilliant minds. Pressing the wrong button. Anyway, I'd like to first acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and as the traditional owners of the land here, pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and all the Aboriginal and traditional owners of the lands where we conduct our research, and pay my respects to anybody Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander in the room here with us today. Just a bit about my disclosures. I don't take any money from the tobacco industry, just to reassure you. So look, one of our projects that we ran, which we called for short Our Stories, we talked to women, Aboriginal women, about their whole journey of smoking from, when they first counteracted as came across smoking maybe as children all the way through to pregnancies. And we found from that that project that there were multiple opportunities to intervene in smoking along the woman's whole life course. So, that goes from childhood, youth and adulthood. And so I think it's important when we think about smoking and pregnancy, that's just a slice of somebody's life where, they're pregnant right now and they're smoking. But, that smoking starts often way back in childhood, quite often at an early age, where, women might be children might be lighting cigarettes for parents, get used to taking puffs of cigarettes, etc. So I think we need to keep a broad idea of a lot of different ideas of services that where we could actually intervene in smoking all along that whole trajectory, and I've mentioned some of those here. But I also want to focus on what works in pregnancy, what we know works now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about health messaging, counselling, nicotine replacement therapy and incentives, and then I'm going to go on to talk about the research our team are doing, and so you'll see how, what our rationale is behind what we're aiming to do. So a statement here that health messages may be best if positively framed. So we know there's not a lot of health messages out there nationally about smoking and pregnancy. We do have the graphic health warning, so a lot of people try and avoid buying one with the baby on if they happen to be pregnant. But I know from the research that I conducted when I was doing my PhD that often having fear-based messages are not going to be as effective for Aboriginal people if they've got low efficacy to quit. So if somebody's got high efficacy to quit and they're quite confident about quitting, a fear-based message might kind of nudge them into going, yeah, okay, I really need to do this. But if somebody has low efficacy to quit and they're bombarded by fear-based messages, which is a lot of predominant messages around, they may actually then start to discount the message or deny it or just feel it's way too hard. So in that sense, pregnant women are particularly vulnerable, and they may walk out the room when there's a fear-based message on and they don't want to see it. But so it's very important to build up women's efficacy with positive-based messages. But the other thing to say is the messages seldom are about the chronic disease story that's caused by smoking. And some of those messages now, people need to know that. People need to know it's not just, having a baby with low birth weight, that, if you smoke in pregnancy, the sequelae go on, for a lifetime. So that's an important thing that's a gap for. When you come down to counselling, that's one of the effective strategies. There's 44 behaviour change techniques for smoking cessation in general, and some of those have been found to be more effective in pregnancy. But we also know that counselling with other strategies does increase, say, double the quit rates. But if, for example, you're just getting health education and brief advice, like risk advice, we know that that isn't going to be effective. It's not sufficient on its own. And just bear that in mind, because when I come to talk about, well, what are health providers actually doing, That's most of what they're actually doing. They're giving maybe some advice about like smoking's bad for you, and that's about it. So the other thing that's effective in pregnancy is nicotine replacement therapy. But there's a bit of a kind of disconnect, because we know from studies we've done with health providers, with GPs and obstetricians in Australia, and I think some other studies Megan's conducted as well, with other health professions, that people are not sure how to use NRT in pregnancy. They're not sure about the safety, about the effectiveness. And on the other hand, women are not certain about whether it's the right thing to take. You know, we've done a really good job of persuading people not to take anything in pregnancy, and now, you know, we're trying to say, oh yes, but take this. And also the complication is the nicotine metabolism is faster in pregnancy. So it's a bit counterintuitive. You have to use more NRT rather than be very tentative and use less. But NRT does have a modest 40% increase in quit rates. That jumped, but never mind. And I did want, if I have time later, look, if anybody's interested to know what sort of NRT you can get on the PBS, because not everybody knows. I'm happy to talk more about that, if I have time at the end. In terms of incentives to quit smoking, this is probably the biggest influence on smoking cessation in pregnancy. So can triple the quit rates at least, or maybe even a little bit more. And cessation can last up to 3 months postpartum. So some other speakers may be addressing this, the trials they've tried with incentives, but some of the trials have been promising in Indigenous settings, but women may be reluctant to actually be recruited into a trial on incentives. I am actually involved in co-leading a trial on incentives with women who use other substances in pregnancy. So I'm happy to share any experiences around that. And the student working on the project, Mel, is here today and happy to discuss that. But when we come down to what health providers are actually doing, so this is actually results of a survey we did in Australia with 378 GPs and obstetricians. But the interesting thing is, a broader systematic review we did over 10 countries showed almost identical picture. I could put it up, it exactly looks the same. So we're no different from what everybody else is doing in the world. It's a common problem. We're good at asking and advising now about smoking cessation. Asking about tobacco, that is. But when you look at the stats on asking about other stuff, like are you using e-cigarettes, do you chew tobacco, are you exposed to secondhand smoke, we're actually pretty poor at doing that. Only 10% of us ask about chewing tobacco, and about 13 or 14% about e-cigarettes. And believe it or not, only about 25% of people ask about whether women are exposed to secondhand smoke in pregnancy. But as you look down the line here, we go down this slippery slope of doing less and less stuff. And particularly low is assisting people by prescribing NRT, but even surprisingly, arranging referral or following up is quite low at 30%. So we're not actually helping women quit smoking in pregnancy in general. And why is this? Well, health providers say they need help with communication skills. They don't want to interfere with the relationship with women. They don't know how to use NRT in pregnancy. They require some extra visual resources. And, cultural competency can be an issue with health providers. We do know from Kristen Carson's systematic review that training health providers does increase smoking cessation quit rates in the general population. So training is something that can help actually increase quit rates. When you look at actually training around pregnancy areas, the results are less clear. We did another systematic review about that. It just wasn't clear. I mean, there was some, I can talk about that if people are interested later. But anyway, coming on to the other approaches, which may be involving family and partner, We do know for Aboriginal women, particularly female role models, especially mothers, are highly relevant, but also so are partners. And partners can certainly help make or break a quit attempt. But we do have limited evidence globally and also in Australia about successful partner and family approaches. But there is some really good work being done in the area of family approaches. So it's just coming down to our research now. So what we're trying to do is build a foundation of research to address some of these evidence gaps, particularly around health providers. But we started at the bottom of that wall with qualitative research, which I mentioned was our stories, looking at some more in-depth research with mothers. We've got a new study I'm going to mention later about with fathers. We're going up the tree looking at training packages for health providers. Our pilot study was I Can Quit in Pregnancy, which then went on to Sister Quit, which is now in its implementation phase, as Tom mentioned, under the TIS program. And we also have developed an app. And when we develop our work, we work to certain principles of co-development with Aboriginal communities. We like to be very transparent in what we do with our communication with the stakeholders. We like to publish everything so, people can see there's nothing hidden. And we work rigorously with theoretical frameworks, particularly the behaviour change wheel and behaviour change techniques. But importantly is privileging Indigenous voices and fostering Indigenous leadership. So having said that, what is our approach? We are using an ABCD approach. You've probably heard of the 5 A's, but we don't go with that. We go with the ABCD, which is ask, brief advice, cessation, which is behaviour change techniques and NRT, and very importantly, we've added the D, which is discuss the psychosocial context of smoking. Because this is, I suppose, above all, especially important for Aboriginal people and also particularly for pregnant women. So it's something that really can be left out unless you try and remind people. So with that said, we developed the Sister Quit project, which was called I Can Quit in Pregnancy in its pilot phase. And that was the idea is let's concentrate to start with in getting health providers skilled up to do this work. Because if women are not getting help from health providers, how can we just expect them to quit on their own? I mean, it's tough. So this has been going on for several years. So in phase 1, we co-produced our materials with Aboriginal services and pre-tested them. We went on to our pilot I Can Quit in Pregnancy study, which was in 6 services in 3 states. We right from the beginning wanted this to be, had the aspiration of it being a national project. So within our budget, we went over 3 states. We then got funding for a randomised controlled trial, which is actually in 5 states. So we've now got 22 services in 5 states doing a randomised controlled trial. So some services get the intervention, the training intervention and resources we've developed for the women, and some just do their usual care, but they'll get the training later on. And now we've gone into phase 4, which is our implementation trial that with our Sister Quit, which is going to be a little bit different. I'll mention that on the next slide. And we're also already starting to think of phase 5, which is a complete national scale up of Sister Quit, so it'll be available to everybody in Australia. And also there's interest from different countries, New Zealand, Canada, and the US, to have Sister Quit developed into their context. So just to quickly go through Sister Quit, this is our new program. It's not randomised, so all sites signing up to Sister Quit will get the intervention. They'll get the resources, the training, the CO meter, supplies of oral NRT. They'll have a safe, self-paced e-learning. So we've gone on to a new e-learning modules of the ABCD approach, and they'll have templates to use with their software. And we're recruiting sites, so anybody interested, let me know. To get with this, we're having a social media campaign. We're looking for social media advisors to help us develop this campaign, but we'll be going out and shooting short videos in about 4 or 5 locations across Australia. And that will be accompanying Sister Quit. And then just a word about the app we've developed, which is basically for smoking, nutrition, alcohol, and physical activity and social and emotional well-being. This is in its, we've just pre-tested the app, and this will be subject of a randomized controlled trial later this year. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. And then, just a brief, the dads have kind of been left out of the mix a little bit. So we're just starting the Poppers project, which is the Partners of Pregnant Aboriginal Smokers, talk to men about what they need for their own smoking cessation, how they can best support their partners to quit and make their homes smoke-free. So this is going to be qualitative research, which we're just starting, but hopefully bring up to speed later on. And just lastly, I would like to say we have some opportunities to offer if anybody's interested to come and talk to me or Tara, just wave Tara, who's got some information sheets to give out. We've got a high value Sister Quit scholarship for an Indigenous female candidate. High value means we're offering extra money. We want educational and social media advisors for iSister Quit. We're recruiting services for iSister Quit, and we're looking for a research assistant for our Mama Empower app study. And lastly, we've got a special call for papers that we're promoting that, if anybody's got a paper they would like to get published on this topic, then please get in touch with myself or Michelle here today, because we've got some freebies to offer there too. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone.